Hello and welcome to another episode of Climate Talks. We all know that today's children need to prepare for a future where tackling the climate crisis is paramount. But are schools actually preparing students and equipping them to handle the climate crisis? And can they integrate climate education into the existing curricula without overburdening students and teachers? Well, a school in Tamil Nadu's Tiruvannamalai district is doing just that. I have with me Poornima Arun of the Marudam Farm School, a school which has actually created and introduced an open syllabus on climate change that everybody can access, be it any student, educator or teacher. It integrates sustainable practices with a holistic approach to education. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. So our first question to you is, what inspired you to actually create such a syllabus? And why did you feel every student in your institution or even perhaps in India needs to understand the importance of the climate crisis?
One of the reason is that we are in deep environmental collapse already. So I don't know if people understand that. So it's not a beginning of an environmental collapse, and we've been in the collapse for the last 500 years. So we are very much deep inside. We've lost our Great Barrier Reef, which is one of the biggest coral production of fish. You know, there are these stories in 1442 when Columbus went to America that he actually took the spear, and there were people who could fish into the seas with their spear, and they could find like 8-9 fish. And today with biggest fishing nets you can't find fish. So we have finished like 95% of the ocean creatures. So for us, what was very important is, of course, you all know about the glaciers, but what is important is that how can we not be honest to children? You know, it seems a responsibility of adults who care for children, who want education in the right place, in order to express what is happening right now in the world, or what is the child born into that world or who is growing up. And so it is important, and so we thought to create this curriculum which brings awareness to the children and to also the adults, and we are co-holders in this. It's not just only for the children, it's parents, it's a whole loss of body of people to engage in this whole question of climate change crisis and what that has mean. So we created that only because we had a responsibility.
So we've realized at Climate Educators Network that integrating climate education into existing syllabus is very important. So at Marudam School, how have you managed that, or is it a standalone subject?
So in Marudam, I think we breathe nature education. I feel all of us are very aware of that, adults and children. So like a typical Marudam class is a math class is happening, and children will say, Akka sunbird, or they'll say bat, or then there would be some short toti, like an eagle, or then there would be some rat snake. Anything can happen at that moment. So we give time for that. We don't continue teaching maths. So we're very as a community, as a Marudam community of teachers and students, we're very aware of nature. We spend a lot of time outdoors. We take children on cycling. We do trekking a lot. In a week, we've dedicated about 5-6 hours for nature education, and we've never made a compromise. So how we've integrated is to build that relationship with nature. Now, one can ask whether that's possible even in a mainstream school. I would say that awareness to an animal or a species or a plant is through a relationship. And that is what we've integrated in Marudam, and which is very important for understanding climate change. In this sense,
as far as subjects are concerned, how do you kind of relate climate?
So that's what. So like observing something is very important. Like if you see ants going in your classroom, do you really observe? Ants are everywhere. There are lizards everywhere. There's scorpions everywhere. Even here in the studio, you might have all these kind of things. So it is important to build that relationship, and in every subject, it is possible to do that. So if you look at climate change is not as simple as we think. It's the most complex thing to understand. Like for example, if you look at biodiversity, we've not yet understood anything. Like as a human being, you've not understood how processes on ecology work. So ecology is a huge subject which relates with humanities, which relates to history, geography. You have to understand time scales, which relates to math, and then you have to also understand language in a particular way, because it also creates, ecology itself is a language, like what does adaptation mean, what does mimicry mean, what is it that what does it mean to what is to mean to have difference in weather, what is climate itself. It's a huge thing to understand, and for children to be aware that okay, today we have rain, to study rain. No, we measure in the school. Every day we measure rain. And so it becomes a vocabulary in the school. Akka, morning, children ask, what is the rain today? Akka, how much millimeter? How many centimeters? So people are very aware of those kind of things in their curriculum itself. So it's not that, one odd day, someday you go and measure rain gauge as an activity. It's part of your life.
Correct. So essentially you're integrating climate into every subject, pretty much making it a way of learning. But how do you measure such an impact? How do you kind of record or observe these impacts in the students that you're teaching?
So the impact for students, I would say, is that if the children are deeply engaging, you can actually see that in their behavior and how they approach. Like, so if you take a question of rainforest, for example, which is the most complex ecosystem, children engage in those subjects very early, like when you're 8 years of age. They are able to understand the nuances and complexity, and then they would ask more questions and engage in that area. So that is a very nice way. And then taking care of of birds or animals around, which is small animals, to ask these questions: have they eaten?
Yeah.
I mean, are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Or they would come and say, today I saw a black winged kite on the way to school. Or like they would keep on talking about different things that they observe. Not, what did I eat in the morning and how my mother didn't get me the best of presents. So there is an attitude change there, The other thing is that they do have also tools to do that. Like, so let's say in a geography class, because a child has never been exposed to that depth of monsoons. So children would really ask a lot of questions on monsoons, why the patterns are changing now, and if they are changing, how does it affect? That's one thing. But to even understand what is monsoons, and to understand plateau, what are mountains, how does Earth spin, what is temperate region, so many things they would keep asking and engaging. If you don't introduce this kind of a curriculum, they only do the exams, right? You have question answers, you're finished with that. Something is affecting your life. It's going to affect your future.
Yeah.
And is already affecting every species. And the things that you see today are not going to be there in 10 days sometimes, or may not be there in 10 years. Things are changing so fast around you. And for the child to have that space,
correct,
to express itself, I think is an impact. So the more the children express and interact, the better it is for them to understand the curriculum.
Very true. So attitudinal and behavioral changes are one of the main measurements of impact as far as climate education curriculum is concerned. So I have to ask you, given the kind of success you have seen at your institute, have other schools, learners or educators actually approached you to adopt this syllabus or to learn from it or actually integrate it into their curriculum?
So the minute you say climate change, I'm sorry, not many people are interested. So if you want to introduce, people get threatened. People think it's a political thing. People don't know how politicians or people will take to it if I did that in the class. So there are these things, and whether it will cut into their exam time, these questions are there. But what is very nice, in many schools we find also these sensitive individuals. So there are teachers, there are students who are interested. So who actually then liaise with the school and say, Akka, why can't we do this? Miss, why can't we do that? They take an initiative.
Right.
So this is also to support those initiatives. So we've seen those kind of responses a lot, like how many people are using Think A Fake has grown. And also we think that when the schools are approaching, they approach very much like we've created modules in it. like we've created women and environment, then we have commons. There are subjects like that within the curriculum.
Right.
So then you have climate change itself, so understanding the geography of climate change. Power, understanding power. So when people choose those topics, there are people who approach for selective topics. So there are schools like CFL and the school and Krishnamurti Foundation schools who have tried that with the students already within there, and they've said that like it is in deep. When you do, they understand how to interact certain ways, and that shows in sociology classes, or then probably into their own humanities classes. It might show there, no?
Right.
So they do see that. So we are hoping more and more people take it forward.
So traditionally, alternative schools have led the discourse on sustainability and climate crisis education. How do we get these so-called mainstream schools? I know that's not a term you like to use, but these rather institutionalized schools to actually adopt this syllabus or to introduce climate education into their existing curriculum?
See, if you honestly ask me, it is very difficult for a mainstream school completely to adopt this.
Yeah.
And it's very important to have certain guidelines and rules that they don't use. A mainstream doesn't use it just for economic reasons. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm teaching English, I'm also doing climate change curriculum. It's not a cool thing. It's about life. It's about your future generation. For species and for life, it's also for a mainstream school if they want to sensitize the child. And I'm sure there are mainstream schools and thinkers within that space who would like a better sensitivity to their children.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is concerning human, not only just a human, it's the whole non-human, and probably these children and the adults might be causing much more damage than you can think of.
Yeah.
Because if you're not connected, today the biggest problem you face is addiction, right?
Yeah.
Your dopamine levels, and we're very aware of that, no? And it's proven scientifically. And one of the part of the whole climate change curriculum is the wiring in your brain, which is towards addiction. Today, the addiction has gone up because we have lost our connection with nature. We have lost our senses are very low. So if the mainstream schools can bring awareness to that, okay, can I do a little bit of a balance where the children have the capacities and not just, go on with whatever they were learning, but a little more open-mindedness, something very important for this curriculum to go through. Like, I've seen a mainstream school, one of the teachers so sensitive. So she took this box and she said, what all you observe today in nature, can you put that in the box? I said, children are in the lunchtime everywhere. The box increased. So it's like, a child wrote, I'm the voice of the sunbird. I'm the voice of this animal on the road. This beautiful crow came into my grandmother's kitchen. So many things children will write creatively. So it's a space for creativity.
So would you say starting off small and also educating the educators would be one way to start in these schools?
I think it's nice for the educators and whoever is involved to have a chill time for a day or two. It's not just about education when you don't experience it yourself. So like I've seen people coming and say, oh my God, is this what it was? And people feel so happy, and people feel like so happy that they have been part of learning. Probably they've never learned. I know one person who broke down in tears when they were doing climate change curriculum. And he broke down in tears because he felt, oh my God, Poornima, for 20 years, have I been teaching wrongly? That moment of that pause to reflect is very important. So there have been very big educators who have taken that pause and looked at, okay, is this important? And for that, I think the training is very important, how the educators are trained.
And do you think training educators could possibly be the way to introduce climate education in a holistic way for these schools? As opposed to just overhauling the syllabus itself.
So I think it has to be together. So that's what I said, because this climate change curriculum is also meant for adolescents who quite equal to adults. So I don't think, so when you're saying educators, they might be quick They might be faster than many of their adults or teachers who are around. So I think it is to co-hold.
Okay.
We do training for how they receive the questions and knowledge. And as I said, there are many ways of knowing. And first, the educators should understand and embrace that there are many children who are coming from various backgrounds in their class. Your class is not like, one background economic child. You can have different economic child coming from different backgrounds. And so it's important for them to first encourage that.
Right.
That everybody has equal voices. So somebody would have, for example, if you say climate change, you'll have something children will Google down and present and people clap hands. That's the worst you can do. That's not climate change thing. To understand, you need an experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So recently, ASR and the Climate Educators Network, we conducted a survey across 4 states amongst youth. And we found that students and children are not taught about actions they can take to tackle climate change other than very simple sustainable practices that they do individually. But in your syllabus, you have an entire kind of chapter on collectivizing climate action. Can you help us understand and help our audience understand why that's so important?
Yeah. So this gives actually an opportunity. Anything which is collective also is a collective consciousness. So in climate change, even every species, where we are also animal, no? We're mammals.
Yeah.
So the Homo sapiens. So the sentients versus the sapiens, they all think collectively. In schools, I think it's important to recognize the capacity of children. So when they come together, there are ideas which are together, and when they are doing something group, they are able to contribute much better. It's not about only individual, no? Like for example, let's say you're taking care of an airy, which is airy means a lake nearby. It belongs to everybody, no?
Correct.
It's a common. So many people are taking water out of it. So how can one individual be responsible for that?
That's
No?
true.
So the child then, through this, understands, okay, we are as a group taking care of something. And then it encourages a sustainable action. Because a group is like a committee. So the children are encouraged to talk about how can we do this together. So it should start with that, no? So, let's say they make a poster.
Right.
Now, if you take the poster and you go and say somebody can come and take action on you, because I've never done that. They don't know how to go about it. It's not as simple as, because you're representing something, right? So then if they do it like a small banner, everyone together and look at some questionnaires, think about it. So the action comes from trying, children being supported by adults for their presentation.
Right.
They present it to a group of people and feel very nice. Not just only proud, but very good as a experience. The positive experience will then lead to action.
Right. And
That's why we put it as a collective.
that's right. And as far as the climate crisis itself is concerned, unless there's collective action, it's going to be almost impossible to
Yes.
address what we are facing. Thank you so much, Poornima, for joining us today. So many important takeaways from this conversation, right from how we can measure the impact of climate education on children, to understanding why and how schools can integrate climate education into their syllabus, and finally even speaking about the impact of climate crisis through education on other living beings. Stay tuned for more episodes of Climate Talks and subscribe to our channel.